Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to a Pro Cycling Manager 2022 tutorial. Today, we're going back to, well, one of my older tutorials, but it's been a couple of years since I last updated it, so there have been changes to the game, and I figured, well, it's about time that we see that it does get updated. So this is our tutorial on attributes, all things attributes, what each one means behind the scenes, in the coding, under the hood. Let's get one quick easy one out of the way, and that is all these green numbers. These green numbers are the RDC, which is, you can see here for Matthew Vanderpool, who we'll be riding with as we go through this, a +2. That is your race day condition. Depending on your settings, you can have this turned off entirely. You can have this set to a low number or a high number. The maximum range is a +5 or a -5 if you have that opted in within your settings. You do need to go into the settings to change that. The default is +3, -3. But a race day condition is something that can be impacted. We're not going to go over the details too much. I have a tutorial on fitness that you can check out how you can impact that. But there's a lot of things that go into what that race day condition is. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a roll of the dice based on a bell curve where the most likely outcome is 0 plus or minus change to what their base race day condition was, with a high likelihood that a +1 or -1 would be the outcome, and then it just drops off. So a +4 or -4 or a +5 or a -5 is much more unlikely to be that random draw. What those pluses do is they add to what the number is here. This number on the left-hand column is the base number for the rider. That green is in addition to it. So you can see Matthew Vanderpool's mountain rating is a 71. With his race day condition bonus, it gives him a +1 to that, meaning today it is a 72 on the bike. You can go above 85 through the race day condition, through difficulty level as well. There are 4 difficulty levels in the game. You have easy, normal, hard, and extreme. Normal, of course, is the base. Here's how the difficulty levels impact the game and impact the attributes. On normal, all of the riders are accurate on what their attributes suggest. So Matthew Vanderpool would have an 80 in flat on normal. Looking at another rider, Niels Eekhoff, would have a 74 in flat, unchanged. On easy difficulty level, we see those attributes impacted by 2.5%. Now, that variation does not impact your team. So Matthew Vanderpool would be unchanged, but Niels Eekhoff would. He would have a 2.5% change. Now, on easy, it's a 2.5% reduction to the attributes of all of the other riders in the field. On hard, it's the opposite. It's a 2.5% addition to their attribute level. On extreme, that's doubled. It becomes a 5% increase to all attributes. Now again, for all 3 of those difficulty levels, that is for all of the other riders in the field that are not on your team. But let's go ahead and use Vanderpool just to show what the math would look like, even though it doesn't matter as he's on our team. If he was on a different team, this is what it would do to his flat rating. So nice round number, easy to do the math on. So with an 80 flat rating, if Vanderpool was on another team, on easy difficulty level, it would translate his flat rating to a 78.8. On normal, he stays stock at an 80, his base number. On hard difficulty level, that extra 2.5% would equate to an 82 in flat. And on extreme difficulty, that would be an 84. So he would have a +4 every day. Not only to that flat rating, but to all of his ratings, making him that much better. So at roughly an 80, which I play on extreme difficulty, that means all of those opponents are seeing similar increases. So Davide Formulo, it wouldn't be a +4 because of the, doing the math. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what it is, but we would say it's at least a +3. So instead of a 73 flat, he's actually riding with a 76, making all of the opponents tougher across the board, where easy is going to make them a bit easier as opponents. So now that we know what impacts attributes up or down, difficulty level, race day condition, all impacting that, and now you know what those numbers are, what are all these attributes? Because we have 13 different attributes with 3-letter codes that, if you look, you'll start to figure out what some of them are. But here's what each is, and briefly going over what they mean. Let's start with that flat rating. Your flat rating is how fast your rider goes on the flat. I know. Sounds simple enough, right? Some of the others are a bit more complicated. This one also is a bit more complicated than that. Now, the range of attributes is from a 50 to an 85. With those bonuses, they can go above or below those marks. But within that range, a 50 and an 85 is not going to go massively different speeds. If we dropped ourselves out of the peloton and just cruised behind, we would still have a cruising speed. And if you took 2 riders, separated them, and put them one after the other all alone, and one of them had a 50 and one of them had an 85, that 85 is going to ride away from that 50. But it's not like that motorcycle on the freeway that's doing 100 miles an hour, which is, oh gosh, what is that in K? Like 140 kilometers an hour, something like that. It's not that person who's, pushing it on the Autobahn. It's not night and day difference. It is more subtle, but it is an impact. So where a low flat rated rider can keep up in the peloton and they're not just going to simply be dropped long term, there's that subtle difference in speed that 50 rated one is going to have to put in a lot more effort to stay at a high pace than the higher flat rated one. And that flat rated one, in a circumstance like this where we are cruising along in flat territory, they're going to conserve a lot more energy than that 50 something. So the difference in pace is somewhat subtle, but there's definitely a difference in pace. Higher the rating, better the pace. But the flat rating also means one more thing. It's how fast you go on flat terrain. What they mean by flat terrain is anything less than 3% gradient. So a gradient of 3 down to 0, but also 0 down to -3. So within -3 to +3 of a gradient. Right now, let me show you, as it's not changing constantly. Right now, this is our gradient. We are at 2.3. So that is using flat rating. What do you do when you're outside of that range? That's where we get into our next 2 attributes, 3 attributes that we're going to cover. Let's start with negative. Say you're going downhill at under a -3. That's going to use your downhill rating. So that's how fast you go when you're at -3 or above, or -3 or greater, that is. In this case, -4, -5, -6, you get what I'm saying? When you're above 3 for your gradient, when you have the positive of more than 3, you're using either your mountain or your hill rating. So there are 2 that divides up this area. These 2 are determined by your effort. So let's go ahead and get off of automatic for a moment. We'll go into maintain position, which is a different animal in itself, and check out my race basics if you don't know what all the buttons mean. But 70 is the effort that we are assigned for Matthew Vanderpool right now. Anything 85 and below, so from 0 all the way to 85, will 100%, when you are above a 3% gradient, it will 100% use your mountain rating to determine that pace. So the higher the mountain rating, the faster you are able to climb at that given effort. So if our effort is 20, everybody's going to climb very slowly. But somebody with an 85 mountain at 20 effort is going to climb notably faster than somebody with a 50 mountain rating. However, somebody with a 50 mountain rating at 99 effort is going to climb at 85 effort is going to climb significantly faster than the guy who's on 20 effort, because he's just not giving the effort. He's capable, and he ultimately climbs faster than the other guy. It's relative to effort. Hill rating is for 95 plus. So mountain rating is 85 below, hill rating is 95 plus, meaning it's when you're pushing, it's when you're attacking on a hill. There is a gap, 85 to 95. It's a 10-point gap. Makes the math actually quite easy on this one. When you are in between 85 and 95 for an effort, you are going to use a share, a combination of the two. So right down the middle at 90, if you were climbing right now, that would be using a 50-50 split between your hill rating and your mountain rating. So in the case of Matthew Vanderpool, we're talking about a 72 and an 81. Let's ignore that race day condition for a second, because that'll make the math very, very easy. But 71, 81. A neutral 50-50 split means he would have a 76 rating going at 90 effort on a climb. The more the gradient, the slower we're going to be anyway, so gradient is a factor, but it is your relative speed. So for a rider like Matthew Vanderpool, he is better as a puncher than he is as a pure climber, meaning a short burst of speed is going to go a lot faster for him. Of course, it's also going to use a lot more energy. The harder you push, the higher your effort, the more energy you will drain. But he will go faster, ultimately, because of his difference in pace. So for him, it's better to go low effort, low effort, low effort, and then when he needs to, go high effort. Push to a 95 if he can, or push closer to a 95 for a short little burst, and he's going to go a lot faster for that short little burst. But of course, it's easier on a rider to maintain a lower effort. So it's a slippery slope on how you manage that one when you have somebody that is better at hills than mountain. When you have somebody that is much better at mountain, if you have an 85 mountain and a 50 hills, you don't want to really ever bother pushing higher than an 85. You want to stay at an 85 and just climb at an 85. In fact, in that type of scenario, you would want to go straight to the front early in the climb with your 85 mountain ability and lead. Force everybody else to match your tempo, which is going to force them to go deeper and deeper, drain energy, and you will have riders drop like flies off the back, because you can't afford to push faster than that. So make the climb hard and you'll see them drop. Better the mountain rating, better off that is. Now if you're neutral anyway, you have a 76, doesn't matter what the effort level is, you're just going to always be based on that 76 because they are identical. So it doesn't matter the share. But again, the closer to 85, the more mountain you're going to use. Closer to 95, the more hill you're going to use, gaining 10% each step along the way up to that 95. Cobble rating is your pace over a cobbled sector. Unconfirmed, but the general opinion is that depending on the difficulty of the sector, is going to use more and more cobble and require more and more energy, but it's going to use more cobble rating away from flat rating. So if it is a 2-star sector like we are about to enter right now, perfect timing on that, it would use 60% your flat rating and 80% flat. No, it would be 60% flat rating and 40% cobble rating. Wow, math. Should be easy for me, but on the fly, catching myself out here. Anyway, so the higher the rating, the more it's going to use your cobble, but also the more it's just going to be difficult, period, and use energy. I think similar to the higher the gradient on a climb, the more it's going to be difficult. Slower it's going to be, more energy it's going to drain. Similar on how that one works. Sprint and acceleration. These two go hand in hand. Acceleration as how quickly you get up to your maximum speed. Sprint is your maximum speed. And in both cases, it is when using the sprint, the attack function. You must have red bar for it to work. Once the red bar is drained, it's going to stop attacking. It will go back to utilizing your flat rating or your mountain, whichever the case may be. But acceleration, how quickly you get up to speed. Sprint, top speed. Time trial and prologue have a similar setup to the mountain and hills, where they utilize a share. In the case of time trial and prologue, they are replacing the flat rating. This, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, is not a time trial or a prologue. But if you have an individual or team time trial, regardless of length, it is going to utilize those two ratings in place of your flat rating, and your flat rating is irrelevant in that type of race. The variance between time trial and prologue, and why they are similar to mountain and hill, is that when you have something under 5 kilometers, you are using 100% of your prologue rating. When you exceed 30 kilometers, you are 100% using your time trial rating, and like the mountain and hills, anything in between is going to use a combination of the two based on how far you are on the scale. So in this case, 5 and 30 kilometers being the gap, that means you have a 25 kilometer gap in between. So 12.5 kilometers space in between is the halfway point. So in this case, adding 5, because we're starting at 5 kilometers and finishing at 30, it is 17.5k is an exact 50-50 split between your time trial and prologue rating. In the case of today, if this were a time trial of some length, Matthew van der Poel would have a 76.79. So if it was 17.5 Ks, he would have a 77.5. If it was 5 Ks, he would have a 79 with the prologue rating. If it was 30K or more, he would have a 76. So that is how that one works. And of course, it scales in between based on that percentage gap, on how much of the gap has been covered. In a time trial, the same rules apply though. This, your time trial and prologue rating, replaces the flat rating. It, however, does nothing in regards to impacting the mountain or hills ratings, and those mountain and hills ratings are still utilized. So specifically the mountain rating in the case of a time trial. So if you have a rider who has an 85 mountain but is fairly poor on the time trial, and then you have a gradient above 3%, they are going to gain significant time on that climb because it is going to utilize the mountain rating through that stretch. And on to the final four, the right-hand column, and this is where we do have some change this year, at least for 3 out of 4. Now, the top stat, Bear is a breakaway stat. It is a stat that actually means absolutely nothing for you on your team. A high Bear rating will only impact if you use quick simulation. If you are doing a live 3D race like this, the Bear rating on your team has no impact. It means nothing unless the riders are under automatic control. When you control them, it means nothing. Now, what it does mean for all of the other riders It is the likelihood, telling to the AI, it is the likelihood of them to try to break away. Matthew Vanderpool, with a very high Barrador rating, has a tendency to go attempt late breakaways. 60 kilometers from the finish line, he often will try to go solo to earn the victory that way. Hence the high Barrador rating. He is more likely to do that. In fact, we're seeing a group of riders, 3 or 4 of them right now, pushing hard towards the front and looking Michael Matthews trying to attack. Team orders are, of course, a factor, but you can see he does have a fairly high Barrador rating. Shockman as well. Zagire. But these guys are going quite early. A lot of that comes down to the team game plan. Now on to the other 3. These are the ones that changed. So stamina, resistance, and recovery. Let's start with recovery. Recovery is tied to the green bar at the bottom of each rider's card. So Matthew Vanderpool's green bar at the start of a one-day race will always be full. If he did not race the previous day, it will always start full. Recovery is about long-term impact. It's about Grand Tours. So for one-day races, racers always end up starting with a full green bar. Over the course of many days, racing back to back to back, your start point is going to be impacted. Meaning you're going to start days with less and less green bar the longer you have been racing. So for example, as you hit the final stages 18, 19, 20, 21 of a Grand Tour, you are more likely to begin the day with less and less and less energy. And that's ultimately what that green bar represents. What happens in actual practice, we'll take a quick look here. Stannard has used up a lot more green bar. He has a lot less left at this point than Vanderpool does. Vanderpool is actually right at the happy zone. Perfect timing on this one. Where once you get past this point, your maximum for the other 2 is going to begin decreasing. This is your energy consumption over the course of the day. So every effort you make, every time you go deep and ride harder to keep your position or try to attack or climb up a hill or go over a cobbled sector, the more effort you are required to give, whether it's to hold position or to attack, it's going to drain this bar. Once you get past right about this point, it's going to start taking away your maximum effort. Because as we watch Vanderpool on this climb, you can see we're just starting to take away a little bit of energy. You can see Maurice, he's right at what his maximum is. Gogol has almost nothing left. He's in a break. He attacked. And he's got no energy, but you can see as his heart rate comes down, he's going to recover. However, if he sat up and just went straight out the back and just went into recovery and made no effort any further, he's going to recover his yellow bar. But he's only going to recover to this point because he's no longer at this threshold. So the lower you get, the more it decreases your maximum remaining for today's effort. Vanderpool, being a better, stronger rider with a high flat rating and a high cobble rating and good enough in the other areas and very high stamina resistance, hasn't had to expend the kind of effort that other guys have. He's also probably been protected by a number of riders over the course of this race. Not that I've been paying much attention to it, but hence he has a lot more left in the tank right now. Maurice has expended more effort. He is draining down, but he's a good rider and still in good shape, and he's almost at his max, where Gogol, Stannard are struggling to stay in the field right now. Not only have they given more effort throughout the day, but right now they are quite tired. So stamina is only relevant on stage races and not relevant on a one-day race such as this. Stamina and resistance are the here and now impacted ones though. Stamina is directly tied to your yellow bar, and it's your longer term effort. The higher this one is, everybody does get a full yellow bar. And early on in a stage where you are still at maximum, like Vanderpool, where you still have that maximum available, everyone, regardless of what their rating is, stamina resistance, stays the same. But as you get into that point where it is impacted, where you are on the lower end, now your stamina and resistance bars become relevant. And what they are relevant for is your recovery, as well as your ability to withstand the effort that you've been giving, meaning the lower the green bar, the more it's going to lower that maximum. It's your resistance to how quickly that lowers. So in the case of Vanderpool, he has 83 stamina. We are now past that point. His maximum has decreased, but you can see his yellow is a little higher than what his red is. So perfect example, his stamina, the top one, resistance, the bottom one, short-term effort. As he has a higher stamina than resistance, he has a higher yellow bar than red bar. Rickard has similar, but because he has an 80 today in resistance, his red bar has withstood a lot better. Likewise, similar. So when they're similar, the red bar actually stays a little bit longer, meaning you could give a short little burst, a little push, but that yellow is going to drain a little bit quicker. You see, Stannard is one that looks like it's a bit different. Yeah, there's one that's the other direction. See how we have a much bigger gap between the yellow and the red bar maximums? He's a 70, 76. So the lower the stamina, that's the bigger one. Resistance is good for short bursts, short attacks. Long term, you need stamina a lot more than you need resistance, and you can see why. Stannard, way at the back, he's the last rider out there. Gogol, there's your other one. -4 in the head-to-head of stamina and resistance. It's much lower. Those guys, well out the back. Vermeersch, only a 73 stamina, also well out the back. He's got a 76 flat. He's got a 77 cobble. He's a good rider, yet he is way, way out the back compared to everybody else. Meanwhile, Vanderpool, 83 stamina, going strong at the front. Higher stamina, higher yellow bar. Higher resistance, higher red bar. They drain at the same rate regardless of the rider. If you give a 90 effort with an 85 stamina and another rider gives that same effort who has a much lower stamina, they are going to drain at the same rate. But it's about recovery and it's about withstanding that effort you've made over the long-term deal, which is all about that green bar on that maximum part. That's all the attributes, folks. We are almost to the end of this race, but as we speed up so you can see the finish in case you were actually paying attention to what happens in the race, you can see here that a Matthew Vanderpool with a high flat, with a high cobble, with a high stamina resistance is absolutely a contender for today. Now that mountain rating hurts his chances a little bit, but he's strong on the punchy side, which gives him a chance to break away. 8 riders left going for the finish line. Final 8 kilometers as they push in. And it's Van Aert, it's Asgreen, it's Kung, it's Pogacar, Benoot, Mohoric, and Gianni Mascan. Surprising that he's still there. Vanderpool doing all of the work, getting no support because he's the favorite. 83 acceleration definitely gives him a chance, but his top sprint, in this case, was good enough. Win for Matthew Vanderpool. And that's your attributes. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.